Okay, sure, Dipali.
Okay,
Just
it's
give
on
me a
this.
minute for screen share.
All right, please go ahead.
So let me know if you guys can see the screen.
Yeah, it's loading. Yep, available
Okay,
now.
great. So hi everyone, very good morning and welcome to the day 4 and the last session in this series. So today the focus is majorly on the networking services around security and the architecture best practices. So till now we have covered compute services, complete AWS ecosystem, like what are the different concepts like regions, edge locations, availability zones, and other things, how the AWS landscape is scattered. And then we discuss about the three major categories, which is like compute, storage, and network. And then we discuss services under the compute region majorly. Like we started with EC2, then we talk about load balancer and different storage options which are available, like which we can attach to our EC2 machine as a primary storage, as a secondary storage. And also we discuss about the S3 in detail, like what is the benefit of S3 service, which is storage as a service provided by Amazon. We can host website, we can use it as a shared storage for our application, which can be shared among multiple virtual machines. And then we also discuss about the serverless architectures which are available in Amazon, which talks about Lambda API gateway, how to dynamically invoke Lambdas, and how to control access on your AWS resources using IAM. So that is the things that we have covered till now under two pillars. And today we are on the final pillar, which is network. So this is one of the very important pillar in any of the cloud services, not just AWS, but any of the cloud services, because this is where actually all the security concepts comes in. Network is the one using which you can control the access, you can control, define the boundaries for your cloud, and you can define the additional security on top of your basic account which is available. So in terms of AWS also, this is very important from the point of view of exam. Any exam you'll pick up, like cloud practitioner, AWS associate, AWS professional, you'll find lot of questions in the network section. So let's start understanding what is a virtual private cloud. So VPC is a term which gives us the ability to define our own network inside our AWS account. So we discussed like if you remember, when in the first session Dipali created a virtual machine, we used a default VPC which is associated in our account. So each account has its own VPC. What is a VPC? It is a virtual private cloud area which is dedicated only for one account. So other accounts are totally segregated from it. So let's take an example like I am creating a virtual machine in my availability zone or in my VPC, and then you are also creating another machine. So those machines are getting created on the same hardware, because we discussed like AWS is a public cloud offering, it has a shared data centers. So we have a high probability, like if we create virtual machines, they will go onto the same data center, same availability zone. But then how these machines will talk to each other? So will I be able to access your machine with just IP address? So this is not allowed, because this is secure via separate network layer. So each account has its own network layer, and in case you want to define further networks within your own account, you can do that as well. So how you can do that? Then AWS VPC comes into the picture, using which you can define your own network area in your account. So now the question comes in like, why we need this type of a networks? Because we already have one network in our account. So why we need additional VPCs in our account? So consider a scenario like NatWest, we are a big organization and we may have a different departments like CPB, PBB, other departments are there. So in each department, they want to manage their own applications. Like CPB wants to keep a separate application from PBB, and they should not be able to interact with each other for the data security reasons. So one way is like use separate AWS account itself, like one AWS account for CPB and use another AWS account for PBB. So in that case, you guys will be segregated. But what if you want to do this segregation in the same account? How you can do that? So in that case, you can create a virtual private cloud for one domain or one organization, and you can define another virtual private cloud for another domain so that these machines will be segregated from each other and they will not be able to talk to each other by default. And you can define the network level security on top of it so that you can control like what is the access level you want to give and on which resources. So that is where VPC comes into the picture. So this is you can read in the second paragraph like a virtual private cloud is a virtual network dedicated to your AWS account. So the scope of this VPC is within your account. It's not like outside your account. So you can launch your own resources when you create a VPC, then you can launch your own resources. So let me show you one example before we start. So if you remember like we have started with this N-tier architecture in the last session when we discussed like this is the server based architecture and how it can be converted to the serverless architecture. So let's try to understand what this architecture is saying. So in this architecture, we can see like the very first box is an AWS boundary, which is marked in a black. So this is a AWS region. So consider you are defining your service in AWS Sydney region. So this black boundary is complete region. And within your AWS account, you have created a VPC, a virtual private cloud for yourself. And then you have defined four subnets, two subnets, one public subnet in availability zone 1 and one private subnet in availability zone 1. So what is the difference between private subnet and public subnet is like they're isolated to each other. This private subnet cannot be directly accessed from the outside network. It can only be accessed via the public subnet in your account. So that is where if you see like if a admin wants to do any operation on the machines which are there in the private subnet, how they can do it, like admin will do an SSH to the private subnet, the public subnet machine, which is known as Bastion host. All the access is controlled here via SSH keys, security groups, as we discussed. And then this Bastion host will be able to connect to this machines which are hosted inside the private subnets. So this is how you can see like we have added an additional level of security. Like even though we have virtual machines on EC2, but they are inside a private subnet. They are not exposed to the public internet, and that is what VPC comes into the rescue. And then you can see like the replica we have created into another availability zones for the high availability. So let's try to understand how this analogy work, how we can create the similar things in AWS account. So before we start, let's try to understand some of the terminologies, or maybe you can call a components of a VPC or a components of any network. So these are the standard network terminologies. So we start with the very first entity, which is subnet, and even before subnet, the entity that we use is an IP address. So this IP address, I believe everyone knows like what is an IP address. So IP address is a unique ID or a IP which is assigned to your machine so that whenever your machine comes on any network, it will be identified with the hostname and the IP address of your machine. Anyone who does not understand IP address or who has not seen IP address, please call out. Okay, I believe then everyone knows what is an IP address. So it is a generally a uh, a number which is donated by four dots, something like 127.0.0.1, which is default a local host IP address, which is to access your own machine. But when you connect your machine to an any of the network like internet or within a private network, then you'll get a unique IP address for your machine. So what is a subnet? So subnet is a grouping of IP addresses. Like you define a separate area which will define like if machine is part of that subnet, then which IP address will it get? So you can define a complete subnet range. Like this subnet can only have 25 machines, and their IP can start from 10.0.0.0 till 10.0.0.25. So this is what you can define in a subnet. And then you can define the properties on top of subnet, like whether it is a public exposing subnet or it is a private subnet. So if it is a public exposing subnet, that subnet can be accessed from the outside network, from outside of your EC2 account. And if it is a private, then it is available only local to your EC2 account or AWS account. So that is how you can define subnets. The second is internet gateway. So whenever we talk about like subnets and we want to make subnets private, then we need additional component which is known as internet gateway. So internet gateway is the source which will provide an access to the subnet over internet. So it is like inbound and outbound, both the connections are provided by a component name internet gateway. So right now these terminologies you can consider these are the common terminologies, but in the same way, AWS has adopted the same terminologies. But if you go to some other cloud like Google Cloud or Windows Azure Cloud, you'll also see the similar components, but you might see a different names for them. Like for the AWS, they call it as VPC, whereas in Windows Azure, they call it as virtual networks. So the meanings are same, but there is a difference in the terminologies based on the cloud platform. So
BOK.
was there anything?
Not sure from where this
Yeah.
sound came.
Okay. So let's talk about the next thing, which is NAT gateway. So NAT gateway is another terminology, which is network address translation, which provides a secure internet access to the private host, so that in case you have something hosted on your private machines, and in case they want to download something from internet, they can download and they can access the internet via network address translation. So what actually it do, you can see like which means that it translate private IP address to the public IP. So uh, let's take one more example. So if I go to browser, I'll say what is my IP. So you can see that it's showing like this is my IP address. So this is showing in a terms of IPv6 notation. Each machine has two IP addresses, IPv4 and IPv6. So nowadays, most of the applications are using IPv6. So this is my IP, which is exposed over the internet. So how it is, how I am getting this IP, like I am using a Airtel network. And when my machine is connected to the Airtel network, then it is getting a new IP, public IP from the Airtel network hub, and this IP is assigned for my machine over the internet. So if I shut down my machine or if I disconnect my network and change my network, so this IP address will change because this is the translation done by the system. So like it is converting my private IP address to a public IP via the NAT gateway, via the translation, network address translation, so that my internal IP details will be hidden from the outside world whenever I'll access the internet over secure channel. And then the last thing is route table. So route tables are similar to your security groups in which you can define the incoming and outgoing rules for your traffic to your subnets. So that is what you can consider as a route tables here. And again, in the same way, like you can attach a same security group to multiple virtual machines And here you can connect one route table to a multiple subnets in a network, so that all those subnets will govern the rules, routing rules, which are defined in this route table. Any confusion, any queries till now before we proceed further? Because it is
Rajat,
important. Yeah.
Rajat, what is the difference between internet gateway and net gateway?
So internet gateway actually gives an internet capabilities to your account. Like if you don't define an internet gateway, you will not be able to access internet. And the NAT gateways actually do a translation majorly for the private subnets to access internet via a public interface. So this is the difference. So you will have an internet gateway, and then to protect your private instances, you can define additional NAT gateway so that your private instances, protected instances, can also access internet.
Yeah, just to add on, like internet gateway is something which is always attached to the public subnet. So your private subnet don't have any means to interact with internet. So net gateway is the way through which you can connect to the internet, being in private subnets. And net gateway is also installed in the, also set up in the public subnet. So both internet gateway and net gateway can be placed into the public subnet only.
Does that answer your
Uh,
query?
Thanks, Rajat and Dipali.
Okay.
No worries.
So let's move further. So we talk about subnet, internet gateway, net gateway, route table, and every of these components works at a range of IP addresses. So what is an IP address? We already discussed, like it is a unique address assigned to any device that we use, whether you have a mobile device, whether you have a laptop, or maybe any devices. Nowadays we have set-top boxes, we have our router. So each device has its own IP address, which is a unique address using which that machine is defined, and it will be connected over the network, whether it is private network, public network, or internet, using these IP addresses. So let me show you again. It's very simple thing. So if you go to command prompt, so there is a command like ipconfig in Windows, and in Linux, I think it is ifconfig. So if you run this command, you will get an IP address. So my machine's IPv4 address is 192.168.1.12. This is connected to an wireless adapter, Wi-Fi adapter. So this is my Wi-Fi IPv4 address. This is my subnet mask, which is 255.255.255.0. It means like I am a part of this subnet. My machine is a part of this subnet, and according to that, I am getting the IP address for my machine. And then we can see like I also get an IPv6 address, which starts from 2401 and ends on CF17. So if I disconnect my machine from the Wi-Fi, then all these IP addresses will be gone. Then I will not be able to connect to any of the network. So based on the network access on your machine, you might have a connection with the LAN in your organization, then you'll get a LAN address. If you connect to the Wi-Fi, then you get a separate IP address. So these are the IP addresses, and this is the subnet mask. So why I'm showing this subnet mask? Because in AWS or any of the cloud, when we have to define our network, we have to define the subnet mask so that we can create subnets, and then under that subnets these IP addresses will be created. So this is also known as a CIDR, which is classless interdomain routing. That was the concept came in very early in the networking, when networking started with the IP addresses. So they were majorly classified in the four broad categories: Class A, Class B, and Class C networks. And then with the advent of internet, there was a need of lot of more IP addresses, and industry realized like IPv4 addresses are running short of count. And then came the evolution of an IPv6 address, which is a very big address, and it can support even more devices in the world. So that is how it came in. So let's try to understand. This is a very good URL. if you open this URL, so this URL says like what is the subnet mask that we're defining, and what is the host address, and what is the subnet mask we are defining. So if I say like my subnet mask is 28, and my IP range, my subnet range is going to be 10.0.0.0/28. So it says like I will get 15 IP addresses in this range. The starting IP would be 10.0.0 and the last IP address would be 15, and the usable IPs are from 10.0.1 till 14. So this is the subnet masks. Total machines that I can create in this subnet will be 14 machines. I will not be able to create more than 14 machines. So based on this count, I need to define my subnet. So if I'm not clear, like if I can have more than 14 machines in my subnet, then I need to increase this count. So here you can also understand like it is blocking like if I had said like /28, so out of 32, it is blocking, it is fixing the 28 blocks in my net mask. So this is my complete net mask, and each it's consisting of 4 sections, 1, 2, 3, 4, segregated by dots, and each section has 8 bits there, which is the standard size. So out of these 32 bits, I am blocking 28 bits, and only last 4 bits are available to play around with me. Any question, any queries on this? Or has anybody seen or experienced this earlier? I'm sure like you must have read this in engineering when you did your engineering. This was a very important topic whenever we study there in colleges, but we never practiced this in actual life. So the people who are Linux admins or who are majorly a network experts, they play around with these things on a daily basis. So any queries, any doubts on this?
No.
Yeah, is it like once we configure the VPC, for example, say like once we configure the VPC under /16, so and the VPC is in live. So is it like anything like we can edit or change when it is in production?
No, I don't think like we can change the base VPC once you created it. So that is why it is important to use this. But if we can define subnets anytime once the VPC is created, and say you have used /16 as a net mask, which gives you, I think, more than 35,000 IP addresses. Yeah, more than 65,000 IP addresses. But out of this, you only define 2 subnets which are valid, which are using say 500 IP addresses only. So you can define subnets later on, but you cannot change the VPC range once it is created. But yeah, I'm not too sure. But as far as I remember, I think it's not changeable once it is created.
Yeah, we cannot change, but we can add like up to 4 ranges there in your VPC. So you cannot change the existing one, but there is a provision that you can add more IPs to your VPC.
Great, thanks for
Okay.
adding that, Dipali.
And one more question for me, like in the previous points you had discussed. So you were discussing about the NAT gateway, right? So is there a only way that we can communicate to the private subnet, like private subnet or a private VPC via NAT gateway, or is there any other services available like to connect privately? Say like if example like NAT gateway is something like which you're connecting with the internet like via public to private transaction. So like if the VPC is in private, so how is there like any service available to connect privately?
When you say VPC in private,
Yes.
no, I think we need to use correct terms here. So VPC is one boundary. Inside VPC, you have your public and private subnets. And there we say NAT gateway is there in the public subnet, Why net gateway is placed there? Because your private subnet does not have any opportunity to interact with internet. So let's consider a scenario of a 3-tier application where you have like 3 tiers. One is your database server, second layer is like application server, and the top layer is web server. So it's only the web server which you want to keep in your public subnet, so it can be accessible from the internet. But your application server and database server, you want to keep it secure, so you are keeping it in the private subnet. So in general, you don't really need to connect your application or database to the internet. But there can be scenarios when you need to update patches on your database. So those are the times when your database administrator will need to connect to the internet to download those patches. So that is something can be done by NAT gateway. So NAT is there in the public subnet. So your administrator will download the patches onto the private subnet via NAT gateway.
So it is not always required, like as Dipali mentioned, if your application
So,
server is in a
according to
private
you, it
network.
means it will not be accessible from outside network, right?
Correct.
The
So this
VM
is
that
the
is in private
this is
cloud.
the additional security layer which you can impose on your application. And it is
Right.
not mandatory. It's up to you how you want to configure that.
Hmm.
You can keep everything into just one subnet, and which is the public subnet. But if you want to keep your data and application code secure, you might means that is a good practice to keep it into the private subnet, so no one can access it accidentally or like by some means there is no threat for your application and data.
Okay, sorry to ask this. Still I have a confusion that
No
like
problem.
if the application and database is in private subnet, so as you said before, like some point or somewhere the database have to access or application have to access the database. So both are in private. So somehow it have to access, right? So you said like NAT gateway is only use. It's a purpose of public to private transaction, which which is accessible via internet. So, but in that scenario, like if the application server and the database is in a private subnet, so
But
how?
they both can talk to each other.
So I think
Okay.
I have few slides in the coming section. So then I'll show an architecture which will help you understand. And also like in case you want to apply any patch on your database on your application server, then also it's not a requirement to have a internet access. You can download those patches on your public machines and then you can copy them via SSH to the private host. So there is no need to have an internet access. It's just like in case your private site, say if you have a website which is entire website, so like an amazon.com, so you open a web page which is exposed to the customer, and then your application server wants to process a action to a third party site, something like integration with a third party site like SpiceJet for booking a ticket, or with some additional payment gateway where you want to process the transaction from your private backend server. So at that time you need to set up a NAT gateway. Otherwise there is no need until you want to access resources publicly on an internet from the private host, then only you need a NAT gateway. Otherwise there is no need. So it totally
Understood. Thank you.
depends. Yeah, it's totally depends on the architecture that you will use. So let's try
Oh,
to understand this bit further on the PPTs. I think we were talking majorly on the concepts till now. So let's see a traditional VPC model. So when we create a VPC, in the same thing I have shown you, like we have a AWS region outside, then we have a logical boundary which we call as a VPC. So again, a VPC is local to a region. A VPC cannot expand multiple regions, but a VPC can span multiple availability zones. Here we can see. So a public in subnet 1 we can define in availability zone A, and subnet 2 we can define in availability zone B. So you can consider like you have two applications. So this subnet 1 is hosting dev application and subnet 2 is hosting prod application. So both the applications are isolated on a network level as well. Though they already have their own EC2 instance, though they already have their own separate database, but now you're segregating, you're adding additional security using the VPC thing, so that they will be segregated based on the network. Or maybe you can consider like team A is working in subnet 1, so they can access each of their resources with the private IP address, and team 2 is using subnet 2 with a different IP range, and they can access each of their machine, but they cannot access cross machines. Like team A cannot access the work which is done by team B. So this is how you can do a segregation and additional security on top of your normal EC2 account using a VPC. So this is the traditional model where you define two subnets. Majorly you define one subnet for public, one subnet for private. And then this is a NAT structure. Like so in case you want to have access on your you want to provide access. I think this is not a NAT. This is the NAT one, I think. No, here this is the internet gateway, not the NAT structure. I'll change it. So in case you have your machine which want to have an access to the internet, so in the previous section we see like these are just two subnets connected to each other via the route tables. There are rules defined like how these machines can talk to each other, but there is no internet access. So for adding the internet access, you will have another component which is known as internet gateway, and this internet gateway will give you an access to the network. And then you can define one machine in your private network which can act as a NAT model, and then it can provide you an internet access via internet gateway. So this is how you can do, like NAT gateway will do the translation of private IP to public IP, then it goes to the internet gateway and allow you to access internet. So this is also another model majorly used by the corporates. Like you have a dedicated VPN tool, something like Citrix or any other VPN client that you use. And then once you use that, then you can connect to your organization gateway. So in the same way, you can set up a private VPN inside your cloud environment and your own organization environment to have a seamless connectivity, and no other will be able to connect to your cloud resources without this VPN connection. Right, so most of the organizations set up a connection like this. So they use their own organization network. They set up a dedicated VPN line, and using that dedicated VPN line, they access their cloud resources. Any questions till now? Okay, I think we are good. So this is another example, like the way we discuss in case we have our segregation, like we have a public subnet, we have a private subnet, and then we also use another term which is known as a bastion host or a jump host. So we create one machine in a public subnet using which admin connects to this machine, and then this machine allow us to connect to the other machines which are available in a private zone to manage anything. So here you can see like this is a standard uh, diagram, and if you go in this diagram in more detail, you can get more details like how to create this, what are the different things which are available. I think this is change, URL is changed. Yeah, so this is how you can get like how to set it up with NAT gateway, or what are the different systems you can integrate, how you can deploy this. So you can deploy it into an existing VPC or a new VPC in case you want to create a fresh VPC from day one. There are different models available. You can refer this. Okay, great. Yeah, we'll discuss this later on. So let's try to create a VPC. Let's see like how we can create a VPC in our AWS account. So let me go to my AWS account. So remember, like this VPC is a very, very important topic in terms of the exam. There are lots of questions that you'll expect in this section, and all are going to be a very complex questions. So one is like if you already have some VPCs, I think let me go to another region, Sydney. So I think in each region you'll find one VPC by default, which is to allow the connectivity to your account, and then you can create on as per your wish. So one way is like you can go to each of these components, you can create them separately, like define an internet gateway, then define a route table, then define each subnet, public, private, and then define your own VPC, and then link all these things together. So this needs a lot of practice and lots of knowledge on these topics. So I would suggest like people who are network experts or who are the system admins, they are majorly expected to do this job on the ground. But as a solution architect, it is an expectation from an AWS solution architect is like they must understand these things, and based on this, they can decide or promote an architecture for the application. So something like I showed earlier, like whenever an architect has to design architecture for the application, they must also understand the physical layout, the component layout of the application, so that based on that they can suggest like which services should be used in AWS, whether we should be attaching a network, how we will be using ELB inside Elastic Load Balancer, should we be using an application load balancer or the network load balancer. So all these decisions are made by the solution architect. So that is why it is expected to know and understand all these terminologies. But when you go on the ground level, like when you go and want to create a VPC, then you will have or you might need to reach out to your network team who will be actually designing and creating these things for you on the ground. So let's talk. One is like going into detail. So in itself, if we are trying to create a VPC, it takes a lot of time. But there is a easy way. When we click on VPC, it comes up with this wizard structure. So this is a wizard structure, what we are trying to create. So in this, if you go to the VPC only, uh, where's that wizard? Let me go here. I think there is a recent change in the console here. There is a VPC launch wizard. So here you can see like you have a segregated models already provided to you. Like in case you want to create a site-to-site VPN connections, as we discuss here in this one, like this is a site-to-site VPN connection, a connection between your organization and your cloud. So then you have to do additional settings. So instead of doing that manually, you can go and you can use this button, which will guide you to set up a site-to-site VPN connection only. So it provides some tools which are very handy and very easy to use, but sometimes you have to define everything on your own. So let's try to create a standard VPC, auto-generated. Okay, this is the CIDR block. So this is using 65,000 IP addresses. So let me reduce it to say only 256 IP addresses so that I can define two blocks, tenancy, whether I want to use multiple availability zones or not. And then I want to enable host name and enable DNS resolution as well. But this is not a wizard that I am looking for. Just give me a minute because this will just define the high level VPC. So this is the layout structure that you can see. This is recently added. So you will have a VPC created, which will have 4 subnets. So 2 subnets are under the it is like Southeast 2A availability zone, Asia Pacific Southeast 2A, which is known as public subnet 1 and then private subnet 1. So it has one public, one private. And then in the same in Southeast B 2B, you will have public and private subnet, which are named like this. And this is how they have a connectivity. So here you can see like your public subnet has a connectivity to the route table named public, which has an access to the internet gateway. So your public subnets are connected to the internet gateway, and this is how your private subnets will go. Your private subnets will go to another route table, and they will use a project VPC S3, another network link, to access the resources, and they can talk to uh, here internally, like on these lines. So similarly, you can see like the structure is defined. You can change all these structure based on your requirement, based on the settings, but this is the default structure that it is showing. Let me
So
try that
Rajat, you
again.
can like go ahead and try create VPC from here, but you can also toggle this setting in the top left corner, new VPC experience. Go into the VPC
Where's that?
dashboard. So the blue button which we are seeing in the top left, new VPC experience. Just
Okay,
toggle that.
sorry.
So you might see the old dashboard.
Yeah, because I thought of using the wizard which was available,
Mhm.
but I don't think it make any difference.
So
Should
I
I
think you can just,
refresh?
no, I think you can just go ahead and create from there. It is the same wizard which we used to use earlier.
Oh, okay, okay. Seems like a new UI is launched.
Yeah. So this is the like problem with uh, these cloud providers. On every few days, like they keep on launching some changes, some new services, new features. So every time means if you are like accessing particular page after a long time, you definitely experience that. Okay, you will struggle to figure out because it appearance will look different to you.
Right, right. Yeah, so here you can see like it is creating so many things for us with just one click with some basic information, and then everything is being created. Otherwise, you have to create everything on your own, go into each of the separate screen and then create it. So then you can create it. So this is what we can see. Like this is our primary CIDR range that we have used. And then we have some logs as well. Okay,
Let's
let's go to my
check the
VPC.
subnets. Yeah.
Yes, so this is the VPC that I have created. So I can either give a name like project name, something like ABC project, or a team name or an organization name, so that I can understand easily that uh, what is the purpose of this VPC. And then we can say subnets. So these are the subnets which are created. So this is a public subnet in Southeast 2A, and we have prefix of project name. This is the naming convention AWS suggested so that you can, by the name, you identify like this subnet is it. It is a public subnet. It is in this availability zone, and this relates to this project, this team. So this is how you can use your own. You can even define your own naming convention as per your organization, but this is what AWS recommends so that you can see, and we can see like route tables are created and many things are created now. Internet gateway is created for us. This is a project internet gateway, right? So in case now we want to create a virtual machine, how we can do that? If we go to the VPC dashboard, we say launch an EC2 instance. And now during a launch of an EC2 instance, it will ask us to select a subnet under which we want to create that machine. So let's go. We're using a standard AWS free tier AMI, and then this is the key pair, and this is the network setting. So here it is saying like no preference for the network. So let's edit. So we want to select a VPC which we just created. So this is the project VPC that we have just created. So this is the default VPC. Like in case we use this VPC, our machine will get IP address something like 172. But if we use project VPC, our machine will get an IP address from 10.0.0/24 range. And now from the subnet list, we can select like we want to create this machine under which subnet. This is a private subnet. This is a public subnet in this 2A zone. So if I select this public subnet, then I'll be able to assign an automatic IP to this machine, automatic public IP. But if I'll select a private subnet, then I will not be able to assign a IP address to this machine. So based on this, if I create my virtual machine, then this machine will be created inside a VPC now. So all it will have additional level of security on top of what we created earlier. So something like this. So right now, if I showed the setting, so this is what we created, almost like we created a VPC with 4 subnets and 2 subnets in each availability zone, one public subnet in availability zone 1, one private subnet in availability zone 1. And now when we are trying to create this machine, we can specify like we want to create this machine inside public subnet, or we want to define this machine inside a private subnet. So this is how we can control everything, the layout of the actual the physical layout or the network layout for these machines. So any queries, any questions till now? I know it could be a difficult topic for people who are hearing it for the first time, but free to ask any questions if you have. Anyone?
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So, so as you said, like when creating a VPC, it will create, whatever we give, CIDR, subnets, everything. So in that, I could see route table. So, like, what actually it does the route table concept?
So route table generally define the access between private subnet and the public subnet, like how these two machines will talk to each other. Say from my public subnet, I say like allow only SSH connection from these hosts, like hosts which are here, allow a SSH connection only one direction, not the other direction. So that is what we can define in a route table. So something like this. A route table define accessibility between two different subnets.
Okay, so no, so NAT gateway, used for communication between the subnets, private and public. So is it like we have to define the NAT gateway under the route table, or
No.
some?
So NAT gateway will come after the route table. So NAT
Okay,
gateway is something like which provides internet access to the private subnets. So you have two subnets, private subnet and public subnets. Let's try to understand this again. So here you have two subnets. This is a private subnet with different color coding, and this is a green, which is a public subnet, right? Now, in case your this machine wants to have access to the internet, only internet, like they want to open google.com or they want to make any API call to the third party service, then how they can do this? So the call will first go to the NAT gateway, which is hosted inside a public subnet. This NAT gateway will hide the IP address, change the IP address of this machine. Say the IP address of this machine is 10.0.0.50, right? So
okay,
it goes to the NAT gateway. NAT gateway assigns a different IP address in the translation, and a new IP address will be generated, something like 172.16.0.1, and then it makes a call to the outside world and access the API. So now you have additional security, like the third party understand like call is coming from 172 dot something IP, not from your private host. So it will never be able to know like the call is coming from which private machine. So as soon as that network translation is over, as soon as the response comes here, it gives the response back to this machine. The content will be downloaded, and next time again when this resource make a request to the NAT gateway, it may get a different IP address. So this is a way like you are hiding the internal IP addresses from the external world when you want to access something privately using NAT gateway.
okay,
It is
understood.
an outbound, yeah, it is an outbound connection only. It's not an inbound connection. It's an outbound connection only. Egress, that we call egress connections.
Okay, understood. But uh, like somehow in NAT gateway, somehow we have to make a communication to the NAT gateway to the VPC, right? So
Yes, correct.
like
So when
in
you
that,
create, yeah, so when you create a NAT gateway, it asks you like you want to attach it to which route table so that it can know like which subnets can be connected to NAT gateway. So when you configure this NAT structure, it will have its own wizard. It will ask different questions and different policies altogether. So one way is like we just use a simple wizard. If you remember, like I just use this create VPC button and it has created so many things, so many subnets, so many route tables, so many internet gateway, and I don't have much visibility and much control here because all the structures were default created. So how we can control it otherwise, we can create all these things manually. Like I can go and I can define an internet gateway myself, like create an internet gateway, then define the rules. So in that case, I should be a network expert who knows all the settings of this section. Like, so that is not the case. I'm not a network expert. That is why I'm using this easy way, like using a wizard. But in an actual world, when you define things, you will have a network expert in your organization who will be creating these things. So first thing is like you'll do a sketching, something like this sketching on create a architecture on paper. You define ranges on paper. Then you start creating each component manually on AWS console. And then later on, you start creating machines and then testing like whether this machine is hosted in public, whether it has a public IP or not. So this is a long cycle, but just for the demo purpose, I use a wizard to create this complete structure in just 5 minutes.
okay.
Otherwise, in an actual real time, you need lot of planning. So again, it's very difficult. Say I have created this structure and now requirement came in like I need to open a port on this machine only. Like for my private subnet in availability zone 2, I need to open port say 3306 as well for accessing a database. So how will you go and do this and how you can do version control as well? Because nowadays infrastructure managing infrastructure is becoming very difficult, and how you can do version control is then there comes another concept of infrastructure as a code. So if you remember, like this is what I showed you earlier, like bastion host structure with NAT gateway. It talks me like how to deploy. So Amazon provides one service which is known as cloud formation, using which you can create and you can version control your environments. So if we say like deploy into a new VPC, when I clicked on it, it opened another new console for me, which says cloud formation. So in the cloud formation, I can define a complete stack and the stack is available here. So this is a file which by default it's a default template that I'm using. So it is uploading the template on my S3 machine here, or I can upload my own template, and then this template will be used to create the complete infrastructure that I'm creating. So let's view this in designer. This also gives us a UI designer, cloud formation, using which we can visualize how the structure is going to create, and it is showing us a YML file. We can also convert it into the JSON file if required. So I think it's taking some time. So here you can see like all the things are defined as a parameters, like which availability zones you are trying to use, how you are using, which environment you're using. Everything is defined in this YAML structure, and you can check in this YAML file in your source code repository, something like Bitbucket or GitHub, so that you can control which changes are applied. So this is one way, like cloud formation. And then we have a second way as well, which is like a third party infrastructure code provider, something like Terraform and Ansible, using which you can use their own structures. You can define things in a code and then use that to create resources on AWS. Clear? Any questions, any doubts?
Sorry. So, like, like using a infrastructure as a code, somehow like is it like we don't have to access the dashboard, or we don't have to access the UI. We can directly launch whatever service we
Right.
need.
Correct. Absolutely correct. So using infrastructure as a code, you don't have to come to this console at all. You will just define things in an infrastructure as a code structure. Like if you're using Terraform, you'll define that in Terraform, and then you run commands in Terraform, which will create infrastructure for you. So you don't have to do anything while coming onto the console.
Okay. So, somehow we have to put something for connection, right? Like in the cloud formation, like we said, like some YAML is there, some JSON is there.
Mhm.
So, when for example, say like when I'm accessing or when I'm trying to launch something new into the AWS dashboard. So yeah, I have some, I have username and password. I have my account ID. So
Mhm.
I'm trying to access to launch a new service into my AWS account. So, like if I'm trying via, without accessing the dashboard, so somehow like I have to give something.
Right, right. So if you
What?
remember, like, yeah, we created a IAM account. Dipali showed how to create a IAM account, and then that IAM account, you can use a feature which is a programming access or just a console access. So when you are creating an additional user, you can define whether you want to give only programming access or console access or both the accesses. So if you say like I want to give only programming access, then it provides you a separate keys which is known as access key and secret key. So you need to provide those access key and secret key in tools so that when you run the commands, it should be able to access your environment using those credentials. So for cloud formation, you cannot do it outside. For cloud formation, you have to come to this console and then only you can do this. Amazon also comes with another tool, AWS CDK, which is a new tool by Amazon. And using Amazon CDK, you can create your infrastructure using the programming languages as well, something like Java or Python. So if you want to, you write a code in Python or Java, and then using that code, you want to create resources, then you can use Amazon CDK. This is becoming very popular nowadays. So this CDK provides you a complete API using which you can create resources like you can have a separate Java project which is creating your AWS resources on your AWS account. And then you have another tool, AWS Amplify. So this AWS Amplify is again a kind of a command line tool which gives you a lot of um, things to create your servers, your things on the AWS account. So using AWS Amplify, you can create resources on your AWS account. So these are the AWS provided tools. And another tools that we talk about is Terraform and Ansible, which are mostly used in the industry so that people can they manage their infrastructure using Terraform. Does that answer your question?
Or maybe Rajat, I think
Yes.
he can showcase something for Terraform. I think I have a small script
Okay,
at my
great, great.
machine. So maybe let's try to showcase that at exactly how it works in practice.
Yeah, that will be good. Just let me check if we have something left in VPC. No, I think we
Sure.
are done. Great. Over to you, Dipali, then.
Okay. In that case, yeah, let me share my screen. Let me just figure out where it is. So here in this, I have this script main.tf. So tf is the default extension, the way we create Terraform scripts. So let me open this first. So here, how we are defining, because Terraform is a cloud agnostic tool. So here you can create resources not only in AWS, but you can also create resources in other clouds as well, whether it is GCP, Azure, or anything else. So in Terraform scripts, first of all, you need to provide the provider name, that exactly on which cloud you are trying to create these resources. So this provider we have provided here as AWS. And then we have defined a region here that we want to create this resource in US East 1 region. And then exactly what is that resource? We are creating one AWS instance, and the instance name is this WIT demo virtual machine. Okay. And this is the AMI I'm using. So exactly the same configuration when we create these resources from dashboard. So we pick a base AMI. So we are defining that AMI ID from here. What kind of instance I'm trying to create? I'm trying to create a T2 micro kind of instance. And then if you recall, when we created a web server from console, so we provided a user data script in there. So similarly, I have defined a user data here. So what this user data is doing in the user data section, it is the same copy paste of that script which we used other day, that this is a demo web application created via Terraform. So this is how you can create your Terraform scripts and how to run that. So it is available in the drive. And inside web server. So now, first of all, we need to make sure that we are connected to AWS. So for that, we need to use AWS CLI. AWS CLI is already installed my machine. So I will just try to check if it is already connected. So when we say AWS configure, we can validate that thing. I'm not sure why it is taking so long. Rajat, am I missing something here?
No, it's fine. Maybe your internet is slow.
Maybe. So with AWS configure, basically it asks us to provide our access key and secret key, which are the details you get when you create a user. So if you want to give programmatic access to that user, it generates an access key and secret key for that user. So using those credentials, you can connect via CLI.
Dipali, could you please enter? Yeah, seems like some
I think
dot
it
was
took time.
selected. Okay.
Okay, so here we can see, I mean, some access key ID is already there. It looks like I'm already connected in that case. And how can I verify? Maybe I can verify with simple commands. Let's say I'm trying to list all the S3 bucket. So I'm saying AWS S3 LS. So if I'm connected, it will list all the buckets available in my account. But no, seems like it is not connected. So let me just stop sharing and provide my access key and secret key there, because that is something I don't want to share publicly, and that is the good practice. So let me provide key details here and share again. So here in the access key ID, I'll provide the access key ID, and then it will ask for the secret key. I'll provide the secret key, and then I should be able to connect. Give me a moment.
So again, using cloud becomes a very important thing nowadays. But when you talk about managing many things in a single account, then it becomes very difficult. So something like you opened a port, some team comes to you and they said they are not able to access something on their own private machine, and they ask you to make a change. So you go to the console and you open the port in the wrong route table. So it is not easy to check that in the console, because if you change it on say ABC instead of XYZ, you need to check all the subnets, all the route tables where you have opened, and say if this change is done by some other user, say ABC has done this change, and that person goes on a leave, and then someone complained like that request is not done. So the other person, it becomes very difficult for other persons to go to console and then check it. So that is where these tools come into the rescue in Terraform, because you can then do a diff between your bit bucket to see like which change was done by which developer and when it was done. So even if there is a mistake, you can very easily find out the difference between the code and then rectify that. So that is why these tools are becoming very popular. So Amazon does not had much focus on these tools. It just launched CloudFormation service, which is very tedious and difficult to use. That is why most of the people are not using CloudFormation, and people started adopting the other technologies like Terraform and something else. But then AWS realized like most of the people who work in IT industry, they have experience on some programming languages like Java, Python. So then they come up with a concept like why not introduce the CDK, which is again a API base or a programming language base access to the resources. So that is how it evolves.
Okay, let me share my screen again. So here, as you can see, now if I run the same command, AWS S3 ls, I'm able to connect to my AWS account. So means now we have established connectivity with our AWS. Now we need to run the script which is available here, main.tf. So for that, first of all, we need to initialize the Terraform environment. So for that, the command is terraform init.
So in the Terraform initialization, it majorly checks whether you have the latest version of the Terraform installed around the features that you are trying to use. It you have the AWS CLI installed and configured, so that whenever you want to make any connection with the external AWS, you have all those things set up. So that is what Terraform initialize will do.
Just give me a moment.
Yeah, sure, Dipali.
I'm just need to go.
No worries. So by the time she'll come, let's discuss. So any queries, any questions till now? Anyone? Any queries? Any questions? Anybody heard about Terraform or they have not heard about? It's the first time they are seeing. Please speak up by the time Dipali is coming.
Nothing from my side, Rajat.
So,
Okay.
Rajat, we already used one of the major project which uses a Terraform extensively is an mobile.
Mm-hmm.
So they implemented everything using a Terraform, and I believe NatWest also having an enterprises version of Terraform hosted, and they are already started creating an modules for all our with adores to the NatWest security standards. They are already hosting an enterprises version of Terraform privately for NatWest use cases.
Right, correct. Right, Dhanush.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we have initialized our Terraform environment. Now, as a next step, now we want to actually implement the resources which we have defined in our Terraform file. So for that, the command is terraform apply.
Could you please run Terraform plan as well first?
Okay, sure.
So this Terraform plan will actually evaluate and compile the code that we have written, the scripts that we have written, and it will show us like whatever we are trying to create is as per the standards or not. And it will also show us like what things we are going to create, like if you are creating a new EC2 machine, it's saying like we are trying to add one resource, and these are the settings that we are trying to add. So we can cross check. Maybe we can review our changes before applying this to the AWS, and then to apply the changes are like Terraform apply. The Terraform apply will actually make the changes to the environment.
So it explicitly asks for a confirmation if you are ready to apply. So with this script, we are just creating one EC2 machine, but yes, you can create the entire infrastructure, the setup which Rajat has shown, the entire architecture where you are defining VPC, and inside VPC you have multiple subnets, and inside subnets you have multiple components, whether it's like EC2 instances, S3 buckets, some endpoints, or like CloudFront, or maybe many more things in your infrastructure. So by this, like this script is complete. Now let's log into the console and see if we can really check that. So if you recall, I created this machine in the US East 1 region, which is Northern Virginia. So we are in Northern Virginia here. Let's check in EC2.
So here you can see like we have created a EC2 machine outside the AWS console.
And currently it is in the initializing mode. And if I try to access that using the public DNS, see if it is, now it is running. Looks like I need to fix the security group here. So let's check the security group, which is attached to this. So if we check in the inbound rule, we do have port 80. So ideally it should be accessible.
Do you have that initialize script?
Which initialize script? Sorry, Rajat?
Like HTTP server, installing HTTP server.
Yeah, that was something, it was present, and yeah, now it is available.
Okay.
So when we created this Terraform file, so this user data we have provided. So here we are installing the Apache server and starting the services. So it's exactly the same use case which we tried from console other day, and with this script we are trying to create the similar resource from Terraform. So I hope Hari Krishan, it gives you like better visibility. Now you can relate things better. That exactly how it works with the command line and the third-party tools.
Yes,
How
thank
you
you.
can create infrastructure using code. Okay, over to you, Rajat.
Great. Thanks, Dipali.
No worries.
Let me start a screen share. Give me a minute. Yeah, so we have discussed VPC and also Terraform, some bit about the cloud formation as well. So let's talk about the well-architected framework. So AWS has created a kind of a framework that they suggest as a reference guide for defining any solution, for defining any architecture on the AWS, and it has a major six pointers in that. So they call it as a pillars. Earlier there used to be five pillars, but now they have added another pillar, which is a sustainability pillar. So we have six pillars, which is operational excellence, security, reliability, performance, cost optimization, and sustainability. So this is just a guideline. So AWS says like whenever you define any infrastructure, any architecture, so evaluate and your architecture against these six pillars, that it should focus on all of these six, and should try to include every guidance which is available, so that your applications will become more performant and also cost effective at the same time. So you consider all the aspects of an application, which is like availability, maintenance, the performance of the application, the cost optimization, and even the carbon footprints as well in the back end. So let's try to understand each pillar in detail. So the very first pillar is an operational excellence pillar. It says like the ability to run and monitor systems to deliver business values and to continually improve supporting processes and procedures. So whenever you make any of the architecture, you need to consider the operational pillar. Like it has to be easy to maintain, it has to be easy to configure for you. So use something like perform operations as a code using Terraform or CloudFormation, so that the operations of that architecture remains easy, and you can maintain it easily after you create it. And then you can make frequently small reversible changes. Something, the example I gave, like team A asks you to make a change in the route table B, but by mistake the route table changes are done in C. So how you can detect those changes, how you can minimize those changes, this operational pillar talks about it. The second pillar is security pillar. Like whenever you define any application, whenever you create any application, there should be a easy way to identify the security stability of that application. In case there is any security gap, you should be able to trace that. You should be able to identify that easily without much problems. So it talks about the ability to coordination system and assets while delivering business values through risk assessment and mitigation strategies. So something like applies security at all layers, which means like network use the VPCs, use the security groups, proper security groups, then use the security in the database layer as well, like encrypt your database, encrypt your files that you put on S3. So it talks about like applying security at each layer. It's not like as a holistic, but you need to consider each layer for the implication. Then we have a reliability pillar, which means like whatever architecture you are creating, they must be reliable. There has to be a proper disaster recovery in thought process. There has to be easy procedures to test whatever you have created is available and applicable. Use something like auto scaling, auto recovery options, enable additional backup, enable additional logging, so that you can identify if there is something goes wrong in the environments. So that talks about under reliability pair. Then we have a performance efficiency. So whenever you design any architectures, you need to consider performance as well. So I'll take one more example here, which is again instance types. We discussed like creating a EC2 machine is very easy task, but you have to define the appropriate EC2 instance family when you create an instance. So if you should know like for which purpose you are going to use that machine. If you are going to use that machine for an IO operation, then use the specific instance type, so that you get the required performance, required features from your application. So again, it talks about go global in minutes, use serverless architectures as well, because they are much performant without any configuration. If you are a novice and you don't have much knowledge on the platform, then you can use serverless, and by default serverless are very high performant systems. It also talk about like cost optimization. It's not like you have created the best architecture in the world, but it is the costliest architecture. Then it will not be counted as a best architecture. So your architecture should comes up with the less cost. There has to be a focus on lowering the overall cost of the solution as well. Something like again, very basic example, when you create a EC2 machine, then you can use spot instances, you can use on-demand instances, you can use reserve instances. So based on your architecture, based on your need, select the right type of pricing model so that you can get most out of the cost as well. And the last pillar is a sustainability pillar. It is recently added. So there is a focus on the toil reduction across the world. Starting 2022, there is a major drive happening across all organizations to understand the carbon footprint and how we can reduce the carbon footprint. So there are many services which can do well work, but they create lot of carbon footprint. So whenever you design your architecture, also focus like how we can use the services which makes less carbon footprint. Something like nowadays you see like 10 years before we started buying multiple phones, mobile phones, and then we used to give the old phone to our parents and we buy the new phone. But now in the current generation, everyone is ending up with having two or three phones in spare. So try to reuse, resell them, exchange those phones. There are lots of exchange offers coming so that you dispose of the old footprints as well. So similarly goes for the cloud as well. Even though these resources are coming for free, we are not having any visibility what is happening in the background, but we should focus on reducing the carbon footprint and the toil what we are generating. So Amazon has separate created a separate console just to understand the toil that we are generating from our architecture, from our account. So we should focus on reducing that as well as overall solution. Yeah. Any questions on these pillars? Anyone? Okay, I think it is a good time to take a quick break. It's 10:30. So let's come back by 10:40 after a quick break and then we'll start from this point.
Sure,
Fine
Rajat.
with
Yeah,
everyone?
makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you guys.
Okay.
So see you
See you
back in
guys
10
in 10
minutes.
minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.
Hi everyone, I am back.
Hi Dipali, I'm also here.
So guys, please raise your hands if you are there. Else, let's just start in 2 minutes. Guys, please raise your hands if you are back. Okay, someone with name SKP asking what about hands-on workshop. So in this, we planned like it is a 4 part series where along with the concepts, we kept on covering the hands-on wherever applicable. I know today's session is more theoretical than hands-on, but yes, I think we have covered ample hands-on in the previous sessions, and for today, like as Rajat mentioned, you can create VPC after the session. But we kind of stop relying on you guys and stop giving you the assignments basis the experience in first 2 sessions. So none of you have came back with the completed assignment links and all. So we are a bit liberal now. Okay, it's up to you. Whatever topics you want to cover, you want to do hands-on, please go ahead and feel free to do so. And if you get any problems, any questions, you can reach out to us anytime. Okay,
Yeah, great.
in interest of time, Rajat, let's get started anyway. So you want to continue
Yes.
with the slide or how's that?
Yeah, I think it's better if you can take up
Okay,
the next slides.
let me share a screen and open slides then.
So also to add, like all the links, all the guides are already available on our Medium blog, which we have shared. So we'll share the links again. So in case you don't have the steps with you, you can refer the Medium guides and perform all the steps.
Yeah, for each and every lab, like you will find the steps available on the Medium. So whenever you are interested, whenever you have some time, you can definitely refer to those lab steps.
So,
All, yeah.
Rachel, I'm so sorry for interrupting. Yesterday, I went through few labs, and I was stuck on one of the labs where I had to host a static website on S3 bucket. I was running into issues.
Okay. So, Rohit, let's just complete this particular topic and then maybe you can share your screen so we can check that exactly what is the problem.
Okay.
Okay. So now next topic listed here is migration strategies. So as you know, nowadays, like all the organizations are into their digital transformation journey where they are like migrating onto the cloud and creating new applications onto the cloud. So there is a like huge chunk which is being migrated onto the cloud, that there are applications which are running on legacy platform from long time, and now organizations want to leverage the cloud capabilities, hence they are in the transition phase, migration phase. So there are some guidelines which have been laid out for the migration, because every application has a different nature. It is using different, means every architecture is different, and how you can really migrate it with like minimal changes onto the cloud. So you need to be very clear and careful that exactly how you want to migrate a particular application or different parts of one application. So these are the general guidelines. It is also known as 6 R's of migration. So you might see one or two questions in your exams around this concept as well. So when we talk about very first approach, whenever you are planning for migration, just look for the opportunities if you can simply rehost. What do we mean by rehost? That we can simply lift and shift. Our application is running on the on-premise server, so we can simply pick that application and host it onto the cloud server with no changes. Okay, so it is known as rehosting or simple lifting and shifting of an application. So you should look for the opportunities where you can simply do the rehosting. So that is the simplest migration strategy. But there are times in your application, there are multiple things which you realize, no, it cannot be simply rehosted. It will need some tweaking. So another next step for you should be replatforming. Look for the areas where you need to get into the replatforming. Means you are lifting your application, you are making some minor changes at some places, and then you are hosting it onto the cloud. So that is known as replatforming of an application. But there are few things that you cannot use in cloud at all. Okay, so those are like legacy concepts or legacy tools which are not available in today's time. So in that case, you will need to drop those licenses, and you need to get new licenses to perform the similar job. So that is known as repurchasing. So there you just drop the existing licenses and purchase new ones. So repurchase or drop and shop, these are the keywords you will generally see for these kind of things. So means you should really go in order. So first of all, whenever you have like one application, just look for these things, that exactly what all things you can simply do rehosting. If rehosting is not feasible, okay, where I need replatforming. If replatforming is also not feasible, what are the areas where I need to get into the repurchasing mode? And repurchasing is also not possible, then look for the refactoring or re-architecting your entire application or the component of an application. So maybe you may look for this area then. That let's say, let's have one example where your application, your mainframe application, maybe it is using some RabbitMQs or something, and when you are migrating that application onto the AWS, so exactly what kind of tweak you will need to do. Maybe instead of RabbitMQ, you since Amazon MQ is also available, so maybe instead of RabbitMQ, you will link your application with the Amazon MQ to have the native services. So you might need to do a bit of re-architecting when you are planning to migrate. And if any of these four approaches not working for some of the components in your application, then you may decide to retire those application. And if any of these five approaches are not working, and then I think it is best to retain that application on premise, because it might be a best fit to run on your on premise infrastructure rather than the public cloud infrastructure. So these are the general generic guidelines. This is how you should plan migration strategy in sequence as per the different methods listed here. So just keep in mind, and you might need to revisit these things again and again when you are actually into the migration phase of an application. Any questions on this? Though I know I think it is very simple to understand, but yes, still, if there are any confusions. Seems no. Let's see what next we have. I think we have already covered this. Rajat, shall we talk about that draw.io thing as well?
Yeah, Dipali, that will be good to show.
So you want to cover or shall I?
Yeah, sure. Let me show it
Okay.
first.
Okay.
Okay, so we are talking about the AWS well architected framework. So if you go to the Amazon.com site, Amazon AWS.amazon.com site, and in the bottom when you go, you will find a separate link for an architecture center. So if you click on this link, it will show you the AWS architecture framework that we discussed today, like what is the AWS architecture framework, what are the different pillars, how they guide us to design and architect things on AWS, and also they have a very good library of the patterns or the guidance material that they have created. So you can see like it has approximately 2000 pre-built architectures and the guides that you can refer to. It has white papers, it has videos, it has some solutions for already basic things. So let's take and look at it, one of it, which is like container build lens AWS well architected. Not like this. Let's see something we can relate to. So best practice for designing Amazon API gateway, private APIs and private integration. Okay, let's use this. I'm picking up this because we discuss around APIs in our session. So you can see like this is how it says like are you well architected. It's saying like what things we need to consider again in any of the architecture, and then they gives a problem statement, what they're trying to solve, and then how they are solving it. So they talk about all the aspects of that problem in detail in this white paper, how they have designed it. I think there was a downloadable link as well in the PDF. You can see all the sections and how they have compared it with the different pillars as well. So there are some architectures that they have created, and they have compared them with the different pillars, like how much of focus they have given on the sustainability in this architecture, how much focus they have given in the reliability of that architecture. So there's these some references you can find out, like SaaS tenant, SaaS platform, how to design, which services to use, how to use, like they're saying like a SaaS app, then there should be an event bridge, Amazon SQS service, which goes to Lambda, then connect to the DynamoDB. So this is how they have explained one architecture and some rationale behind how this architecture is done. And these are the people who has created these architectures. So these people are majorly an AWS employees and AWS architects who keep on designing these solutions and sharing on this space. So you can also raise your queries in case you have a ask or doubt. There is an option to query on this and they respond back. You can comment on the page as well. So this is one section that you can keep referencing before designing anything. Refer the existing designs and then start architecting from there. This is one thing. Second is, as Dipali mentioned, like how we'll do actual architecting in our world. So we majorly use PowerPoint presentation, but it's not that easy to create diagrams. So there is a tool, like a free tool known as the draw.io, using which we can create diagrams. My BC. So it should show us a screen. And this draw.io is a free application which is available over the internet, and we can use it to create diagrams, design, majorly the architecture diagrams for anything, and it has a very good support for the AWS tools as well. So let me see why it is not picking up. Let's try to open existing one. Oh, I think yeah, it has opened now. So this is a screen from where you can design, and from the left hand side you can see like we have lots of um, things available, like basic. If we go to basic, we have a basic things, rectangle, circle, other things that we can design in PPT as well, and we can include the AWS specific links as well. So here you can see I have imported the AWS libraries, and if we go to AWS journal, it has a logo for AWS VPC and other things. And in case we want to design architecture, so we have a AWS region, So everything we can find it here. So this is a VPC boundary, this is a cloud boundary. So let's take AWS cloud boundary first in case we want to design the architecture. You can copy that, something like this, and then you can design a VPC. So for VPC, this is the AWS recommended way to represent the VPC. Then you can define availability zone. This is security group region in case we want to define an AWS region on top of it. So these are the few tools that you can use, like under database, under compute, we have EC2 machine. So these are the AWS icons that if you use, it makes your architecture more easy to readable and more meaningful as well. So something like the one we showed in the presentation, which is like this. So this type of architectures you can easily create using tools like Draw.io. So they also provide a good library for these icons for PPT as well, if someone is familiar with PPT. But I personally feel like this is much better because it shows alignment and then you can easily connect things as well. The connectors are available, so many things are there that you can use easily. Yeah. Over to you, Dipali, again.
Okay.
Any queries, any question on this? I hope like everyone must have used Raw.io or heard about it.
If not, I think give it a chance. So you will like find it
Yes, we see it as
interesting
a
to.
constraint.
Okay. So I think Confluence, if you're talking about the NetFest, so far I think we have Glyphy, but yes, I think Draw.io will be available soon, right, Rajat?
Yes,
Yes.
already deployed to production now. All the things
Okay.
are converted to
It's already
Raw.io.
available.
All
Yeah.
right. Great. So what next? We wanted to talk about our upcoming event, which is happening just next week. It is called as AWS Community Day. So as you know, like we are part of AWS community, and we are hosting this session as part of AWS user group NCR. So we conduct various events, and so one of the event, it is an annual event which is being hosted by various user groups. So we are hosting this virtual community group on 11th and 12th November. So if I go to the site here, okay, this is the image. Let me open the website. So if you go to awscommunity.in, it is routing me to the indoor one. Let me pick the link. Communityday.in, sorry. So AWS communityday.in. So if you go onto this link, you will get the details about this event. So it is the 2 days event on 11th and 12th November. This is where you can register if you want to have a quick look on the agenda. So on day one, that is on 11th November, we have various session planned. And these are like interesting sessions on the hot topics, which are very popular these days and from the renowned speakers. So we have splitted this agenda into the two tracks. So you can look for the sessions. If any of one of these sessions interest you, you might plan to attend that. So for that, you can register on this website. While on day two, we have planned a lot of workshops. There are three workshop planned. One workshop is around the serverless. Second workshop will be around data engineering concepts, and the third workshop is around AI/ML. So these workshop will be planned. So you can check out the timings and details here when this workshop will be planned and what you can expect out of this workshop. So if you are looking for hands-on things, this is a good place to be in. And right now, when you plan to register onto this, you will need to pay 500 rupees, but those 500 rupees will be credited back to you after you have attended the workshop. And you will, apart from that back credit, you will also get few other goodies or vouchers as well.
So
So
I would say it's a very great space to look up for the new information in AWS world, sessions on various topics by the speakers and the experts in AWS community, and also a very good opportunity to get an hands-on exercises, workshops as well. So go up as per your interest. So 11th is completely a free day, and you will also have lots of quizzes and games in between, which you can play and win lots of things like AWS credit, AWS t-shirts, and many other gifts. So 11th is free. 12th, all these workshops have a 500 rupees cost, as Dipali mentioned, but that too is also a refundable amount once you join the session. So I would highly recommend you guys to leverage this opportunity, because this is once in a year event happening majorly around October or November every year. So I'll say it's a upcoming event, which is a very good opportunity to take out time and join. And also, I think 12th is falling on Saturday, so it's a non-working day. So you guys can take out some time and expedite your learning on the AWS journey.
yeah, and you might be thinking why there is a registration fee for 500 rupees. So it is just though it is like very minimal fee we have capped for these workshop, but it is just to get only the serious candidates registration. Otherwise, what happens? You get like hundreds of registrations, but the turn up will be really low because you are not that serious to learn that concept. So it is just
Yeah,
to
I'll
get
also say
only the
like,
interested participants.
yeah, do hurry because there are limited seats for these workshops.
Yeah.
11th is completely open, anyone can join, but 12th especially is a limited seat. So book your seat now to get a slot there, available slot there.
Yeah, so that is around the upcoming event in the community. And apart from that, if
Dipali,
yeah,
I have a doubt regarding this workshop day.
mhm.
So, is there any prerequisite for this, or
So
just need to register?
I would say you can check the details in the specific workshop. Though I think some of them need some basic knowledge on the AWS ecosystem, so you can use the account. So you can actually follow along and do the simultaneous hands-on with the instructors.
Okay.
Okay, so
So not a not a
just check the
major
details.
prerequisite. Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
say not a major prerequisites. A basic understanding about the AWS. So if you have attended all our sessions, you're already at that level. And also just a basic AWS account that you require for those sessions.
I close that. And definitely the prerequisite that you should be having that AWS account, active AWS account available with you.
Right. So I think someone asked a question like whether the recording will be available for these workshops. So I think
No.
they will not be available, because the purpose of those workshop is a kind of a hands-on things similar to what we did here. But yeah, instructions will be available post the session so that you can use them later on as well. So the detailed instructions will be available along with all the source code so that you can try those things anywhere later on.
Yeah. And since these workshop will be of like 3 to 4 hours duration, so I think um, you will really not leverage that recording later on, if even if it is available. But yes, short answer is recording is not available in case of workshop, but yes, recording is there for all the day one sessions. Apart from that, like hackathon is also going on. It is a pre-event hackathon which is currently running and going to be end today itself. So I can just share the information, but yes, I think there is no opportunity to participate in this now. But yeah, this is another interesting area to try on and things. The conceptual thing and see that it's opportunity to see the concepts into the actions. So I think like if you are interested in exploring new things, just keep watching hackathons and all so that you can participate in there, and it definitely expedite your learning curve. Okay, apart from that, I was adding one more thing that if you are interested to explore more things on AWS, so we have shared like couple of links with you, like Medium blogs and everything. And I have also video courses available on LinkedIn. So one is available on DevOps. So it is somewhere around 2 hour-ish, kind of 2 hour, 20 minute, I think precisely. So if you want to explore DevOps services available in AWS, you can also plan to go through this course. Similarly, there is another course is on the data engineering. So if you are working with the data sort of applications, it is another good course which you can explore on the LinkedIn Learning, where we are like, talking about the implementing data engineering and DevOps with AWS services. Okay, so I think
So I think
before I
it's all about learning and what resources are available. But if any of you are also interested to contribute back to the community, so you guys are most welcome. Reach out to us. We'll see how we can align you with the community, and you can also start contributing back here as well. So there are lots of events happening across the year, various events happening in the AWS community, and you can contribute as per your availability and as per your expertise areas.
Yeah, it is a very good mutual learning platform with the like-minded people around. So if you want to share something, if you have created some innovative or some interesting application and want to share it with others, so it is a very good platform to talk about and showcase those things.
Also, you'll be getting up to speed on the AWS information. You'll be meeting likewise people who are doing stuff in community. So it gives you good motivation as well and keep you connected across the year.
Yeah. So apart from that, anything else we want to cover, Rajat?
We have the practice questions to be discussed.
Okay, so before that, let read their details on these links. But Rohit, over to you. You can share your screen. So let's look into the problem which you are facing on website hosting. Rohit, are you there, by the way? You are on mute in case you are speaking.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, I was on mute.
No worries.
So, I mean, I ran into
Hands-on and attempt some practice questions available on the internet as well. So that is the recommendation. But yes, just to have an idea that what kind of questions you can see in the exam. Okay. Would someone want to volunteer to read this question, by the way, from the audience?
Sure. So, a retail organization is deploying a new application that will read and write data to a database. The company wants to deploy the application in 3 different AWS regions in an active configuration. The databases need to replicate to keep information in sync. Which solution best meets these requirements? So we have 4 options, and ideally we need to choose one.
Yeah. And in case you are expected to choose 2 or more, so it is like clearly mentioned that you need to choose 2 or 3 options. Okay.
So there will be different type of questions, like you'll also have a true false, but again questions will not be straightforward. Like in this case they could clearly have asked how you can deploy an application with 3 different AWS regions and active configuration. So instead of that, they'll create some kind of a use case around it, like you're an architect of this company and this company is doing a retail business and they are the new in AWS or something like that. Try to create a use case or a story around the question. So it is important to understand the gist of the question, like what exactly they're trying to ask, rather than getting more into the details of the company or the role that they're describing.
Yeah. So if we try to understand this question in bit detail, so it is asking for active configuration, which is giving us an hint that okay, it is a multi-region kind of setup, because when we talk about active configuration, we are talking about a DR setup. So it is, and DR can be implemented in the multi-region. But when we are talking about high availability, so that is something which is in the same region across multiple availability zones. So here we are talking about some services which can be multi-region services, okay? And now they are asking the database need to replicate to keep information in sync. So your database, whatever database you are using, that should be able to replicate in real time across the region. So I think these are the key things here which we need to keep in mind while choosing any options here. So first option is Amazon Athena with S3 cross region replication. Any thoughts on this option? Can it be a possible answer, or it cannot be a possible answer, or may not be?
It may not be Deepali, because there might be a delay between Amazon Athena to sync to an S3, and then it will be synced back to the another region. Because they're asking for an active.
Mhm.
There might be a delay between syncing data between different regions, and
Mhm.
in between we are introducing S3 as well. So I believe its first one is not possible.
Okay, good thought process, Dhanush. But a key thing which you are missing here is that Athena is not a database.
Okay.
Here we are looking for some database. But if we talk about Athena, it is not a database. It is a simple querying service, which you can put means with which you can query your S3 data.
Mhm.
Okay. So definitely we can simply rule out this option for that reason. Now let's look at the second option, AWS database migration service with change data capture. So again, the reason is same. This is the migration service, not the database service. So we can rule out this option as well. Happy to hear any different views. Okay, let's move on to the next option. Now it says Amazon DynamoDB with global table. So yes, DynamoDB is a database and global table. So global table is a concept in DynamoDB. So if you're creating your DynamoDB table as a global table, then yes, you can communicate with other regions as well. So this can be a possible option, but let's check what is the other option. What are the other options available? So now they are talking about Aurora global databases as well. Any, because yeah, these two sounds to be maybe these can be, one of these can be the right option, but which one is that? Any thoughts?
Both will be applicable because the question itself is the best mix, right? With more than one right answer. We'll go for C.
I'm sorry. Would you like to repeat? I
I
did.
for both C and D. Deepak.
No, we just need to choose one because they have not written it explicitly that we need to choose two options.
I'm just guessing the option 3 will be best suited because of the global tables, and it's just a guess.
Mhm. Okay. Okay, so the right answer here is C only. And the reason is because here the key term here is that they want to keep information in sync. So as Dhanush, you mentioned in the beginning that we cannot really expect any delays. So when you are using the global databases, then when you are replicating across the region, there is a delay when it is syncing up. But when you are when you are using DynamoDB global tables, so it is getting synced behind the scene. You don't really need to do any additional configuration for this. So it is always getting synced in the real time. So that's how DynamoDB is a better choice here rather than Aurora global databases. Okay. So yeah, correct answer is C. Now let's look at the next question. Who wants to read this one? I want someone else apart from Dhanush, Rohit, and Hari. I need some fourth volunteer this time. Come on, guys, you just need to read the question. You are not supposed to tell the answer and justifications. That we will brainstorm. Okay. Krishna, would you like to read this out for us?
Yeah, sure, Deepali.
Okay, thank you.
So, you are building an application that will collect information about user behavior. The application will rapidly ingest large amounts of dynamic data and requires very low latency. The database must be scalable without incurring downtime. Which database would you recommend for this scenario?
Okay, and options we have RDS, DynamoDB, Redshift, and we have two instances of RDS, MySQL and Microsoft SQL Server.
Okay.
It would be.
RDS, maybe I would suggest DynamoDB.
Yeah, I'm not sure about
Maybe NoSQL database. This one
Mhm.
may be quite faster than the other options, RDS with MySQL or RDS with Microsoft SQL.
Mhm.
But I'm doubtful about Redshift.
The thing which I feel is right. They say it's a dynamic data. Basically, the data is not structured. So if it's
Correct.
not structured, we cannot go for an RDBMS based databases. We might be go for the non-SQL, non-SQL based databases for performance. In this case, DynamoDB is a non-SQL, and Redshift. I'm not sure about that. So I'm not able to take a choice between DynamoDB and this.
Yeah, so absolutely correct approach, Dhanush. So again, yes, as you said, here we are talking about the dynamic data, then we cannot restrict into a schema structure. So we need to choose a NoSQL one. Redshift here is a database service, data warehouse service in AWS. So here we are trying to ingest the incoming real-time data. So we are not bounding into any like schema structure, and we are dealing with the small set of data. We really don't need to get into the analytics and warehousing things. So Redshift is not a good option here. And it also talking about that it must be scalable without incurring downtime. So as we understand, DynamoDB is a fully managed service, and whenever we talk about fully managed means we don't need to worry about scaling and high availability of this. So that's how we can choose DynamoDB confidently here. Any different thoughts or any other thing if is coming into the mind and that needs some discussion? Okay, then we are good to move on. Who wants to read the next one? Come on, guys. Otherwise, I will randomly pick some name. Sakshi, would you like to read this one, please? Sakshi, are you there? Okay, then Rinesh. People are not willing to speak. Strange. Okay.
May I join?
Yes, please.
A training provider hosts a website using Amazon API gateway on the front end. Recently, there has been heavy traffic on the website, and the company wants to control access by allowing authenticated traffic from paying students only. How should the company limit access to authenticate users only? Choose only two options. Option A, allow users that are authenticated through Amazon Cognito. B, deploy AWS KMS to identify users. C, allow X.509 certificates to authenticate traffic. D, limit traffic through API gateway. And option E, assign permissions in AWS IAM to allow users.
Okay, and we need to choose two options. Any thoughts, guys?
I'll go for option
B and E.
Sorry, you said B and E.
not B. D. Limit
D
traffic.
and E. Okay, API gateway and IAM. Okay,
I would also pick option D and E.
okay. Now
Madam,
let's
what is
For EA also, it's
X.509
a possible
certificate?
answer.
um
Yeah, basically they already hosted the entire API has been protected using an API gateway. So
mhm.
using relevant technology in API gateway, adding an role-based or an attribute-based control on API gateway makes it easier to achieve. Basically, we need to understand who are the paid user. For that, we can use an IAM user permissions, and restrict using an API gateway. So D and E make sense to me.
Okay. Yes, someone was also adding to something.
Yeah, A is also a possible answer. Authentication and
Okay.
A
Why
and
A?
D.
Would you like to explain?
No,
Means when we use Cognito, what it does? Any thoughts around this?
so it's front end,
Hmm.
and when they do the authentication with, and it has to be combined with IAM.
Hmm.
So like I just there's a possibility. We like bit confused about A, B, and B.
Hmm. Okay.
I just ruled out B and C, not other like that. Another three can be either one of two of them.
Yeah, I think for E, there is no debate. E is definitely should be the right answer because whenever we talk about security
Yes.
or these things, so IAM is definitely a foundational service. So no second thought about option E. But yes, now we need to look for other possible option in this list. Okay, so Rajat, would you like to add more context to this?
So if you remember, like when I was showing API gateway, I talked like how you can control traffic and how you can add authentication. So Amazon API provides an integration with the AWS Cognito service for the authentication for your API. So role-based access, I told you like if you want to access only admins can create a record, but all others can read a record. So AWS Cognito is a service that you can use for authentication. And the things that we're talking about limit traffic. So limit traffic says like only 100 calls per minute or 100 calls per second should be allowed on the API gateway, but it does not talk about the authentication. The limit can only talk about the number of request API gateway should process. But here the question is saying like how we can authenticate, allow the authentication only. So
Yeah,
then I
and
think
when we
and
are using API gateway and we are limiting traffic, then it is not the best use of this service because API gateways again like fully managed service from AWS. So you can use API gateway to handle as much as traffic you're getting on your application. So it is something not to limit traffic. But
but
yes,
still, Dipali, sometimes it's valid to limit traffic for the resources based on the use cases. So that is why those provide the feature. So you can define the upper limit
mhm.
sometimes that you want.
Yeah, means there are scenarios when
The
you need
rate
to define
limiting.
that.
Yeah, we are not
Yes,
rate
yes.
limiting it, so I don't see
Hmm,
any rate limiting here with
hmm.
authentication.
Yeah, but since this is more focused on authenticating that incoming traffic, So Cognito and IAM, these are the two services through which we can handle authentication.
So
So
also to add, like there is no right or wrong on answer. So this is a grade-based answer. If you have given answer like A and D, you will still get marks. So it's not like if you have given answer like exact, you will not get marks. It is a weighted based exam. It's not like yes for only one answer. If you select other options, then also you will get some answer like 50% or 25% marks you will get on that topic if you select other option.
yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Any new volunteer this time?
Okay, I'll
Yeah,
go for it.
yeah, Ananta here. So let me read out. So an application you are designing receives and process files. The files are typically around 4 GB in size, and the application extracts metadata from the files, which typically takes a few seconds for such a file for each file. The pattern of update is highly dynamic with the times of little activity and then multiple uploads within a short period of a time. So, what architecture will address this workload the most cost efficiently?
Okay.
So, so want me to read the option?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Please read and share your views. That do you think means for this scenario?
okay, so user consists data stream to store the file and use Lambda for processing. And the second option is like store the file in an EBS volume, which can then be accused by another, accessed by another EC2 instance for processing. And then the third option is like place the files in an SQS queue and use fleet of EC2 instance to extract the metadata. And option D is upload files into S3 bucket and use the Amazon S3 event notification to invoke Lambda function to extract the metadata. Uh, I believe like it's a fourth option is the best option to retrieve the extracted metadata or whatever the session we come to.
Okay. Any other thoughts from anyone?
So my thought is also option D, because kinesis or SQS and all, I don't know about the limit, but uploading for 4 GB and very short duration. So I trust in S3 to kinesis or SQS.
Okay. So let's read options one more time and understand why it means. I know the right answer is fourth only. I 100% agree with you guys, but let's understand why other three options are ruling out here. So in first option, it is talking about Kinesis data stream to store files. So Kinesis, when we use Kinesis, so Kinesis is a service where you deal with the streaming data. So here there is no need of streaming. Here we are just getting some files which are 4 GB in size. So we will look for the cost effective option, because here they are talking about which workload is most cost efficiently. So option A will do the job, but it is not an efficient solution given the scenario. So that on that basis we can rule out the Kinesis one. And second option is talking about store the file in EBS volume. And where do we get EBS volume? Let's say on EC2 instances. So whenever like if we are storing files on EC2 instance, it will be stored in the EBS volume. So any thoughts like why this cannot be a right option? We can definitely store files on EC2, right?
But that is the application specific data stored in EBS. So when we like, and it's costly too. When we store these kind of data, it will completely uh, consume the application memory. Right?
Mhm. Yeah, so means definitely like you can store your data, means application data as well as your data files on EC2 machine. But yes, a key thing here is the cost. EBS is always the costly storage service rather than S3. S3 is the most cost effective storage service. So, in your use cases, you should definitely look for opportunities that you are storing your data for longer time in S3, and maybe the duration when you need to process that data or make some changes into that data, that time you are bringing that file onto the EC2 or maybe in Lambda, altering that and saving it back to the S3. So
So
you should,
another major factor is like they're not asking to process the file. So even if you have to process the file, then EBS would be a good option so that you can process quickly. But here it is talking about the metadata only, extracting the metadata of the file, not the actual contents of the file.
yeah, and which can be very well achieved from S3. So that's how we can rule out this EBS volume thing here, because it is again a costly affair. Next option is talking about SQS queues. So it is not a storage service at all. So you can simply rule that out. It is a simple queuing service where you can queue up your events and can process them in sequence like that.
So SQS is something like a JMS message queue that you have typically in Java. You can post a message, but not the huge objects like 4 GB in size on SQS.
Okay, so the fourth option is saying that upload files into the S3 bucket and then use event notification. What is that event notification? The moment file is saved onto the S3 bucket, it will trigger a notification, and that trigger will actually invoke the Lambda. So Lambda function will be executed and it will bring the metadata for you. So that's how fourth is the better design here. Okay, let's move on. Who wants to read this one? Questions seem to be small, but yes, options are lengthy here.
Any
No volunteer?
volunteer for the reading?
Sudhakar? Okay. No one wants to read. That's very strange. Hari Krishna, maybe you can read this one for us.
Can I go?
Yes. A solution architect is designing a new workload where an AWS Lambda function will access an Amazon DynamoDB table. What is the most secure means of granting the Lambda function access to the DynamoDB table? So the options are: option A, create a DynamoDB username and password and give them to the developer to use in the Lambda function. Option B, create an identity and access management role with the necessary permission to access the DynamoDB table and assign the role to the Lambda function. Option C, create an identity and access management role allowing access for AWS Lambda and assigning the role to the DynamoDB table. Option D, create an identity access management user and create access and secret key for the user. Give the user the necessary permission to access the DynamoDB table. Have the developer use this key. Oh, sorry. 1 second.
No problem. Just a hint, and this is something which we have seen in action in our previous session, where Rajat was demonstrating the interaction between Lambda and DynamoDB tables and API.
Okay, option B looks more relevant.
Option
B, yeah.
B, you said, right?
No,
Okay.
option D for Delhi.
D.
Okay, I was
Okay.
suggesting B.
Okay, so let's read these out one more time. So B is talking about IAM role with necessary permissions, and D is talking about IAM user and create access key and secret key for that user and give the permission to DynamoDB table.
So in the question it says, what is the most secure means? The reason I chose D is that there is an additional step in D where we are also giving user the secret key to access the machine. That is why.
And you are giving these access key and secret key to which user? Let's say you have a user ABC, and what this user is doing, you have assigned access key and secret key to this ABC user, and then what this ABC user is trying to access in turn.
They will access the Amazon DynamoDB table.
Okay, and then how about Lambda? Because we need to give access to our Lambda function so it can access DynamoDB table.
Okay.
Right?
I'm not really sure on that.
Okay, so like whenever we need to deal with such scenarios where one service need to access another service, so you just need to remember this thing that IAM role is the only way through which you can make that happen. So look for the options where it is talking about the role. But if I read this question here, I can see in two options it is talking about IAM role. So let's read these two options carefully and choose the correct one. So in first option, it is saying create IAM role with necessary permissions to access DynamoDB table and assign role to Lambda. While in another one, it is saying create role, allow access from Lambda and assign the role to DynamoDB table. So now you need to think hard. So if you have done hands-on, so means it, so then there will be no confusion for you. So you will be clear that exactly where we can assign role. But if you have not done hands-on, then you will just keep on thinking and remain confused that exactly where we can assign role. So there is no way to assign roles to DynamoDB. You can assign roles to Lambda or EC2, those instances. So that's how B will be the right option here. Okay. Rajat, do you want to add anything here?
No, looks good. You explained
All
everything.
right, let's move on then. Any volunteer for this one?
Yeah, I can do.
Please go ahead.
An architect is designing a serverless application that will accept images uploaded by user from around the world. The application will make API calls to backend services to save the state data of the user to a database. Which combination of services would provide a solution that is cost effective while delivering the least latency? A would be Amazon S3, API Gateway, AWS Lambda, Amazon Azure. B, API Gateway, Amazon S3, AWS Lambda, DynamoDB. C, Amazon CloudFront, API Gateway, Amazon S3, AWS Lambda, DynamoDB. D would be Amazon CloudFront, API Gateway, Amazon S3, AWS Lambda, Amazon RDS.
I think it is the easy one. Any thoughts, guys? So here, let's try to understand the key terms in this question. First of all, it is a serverless application. And then it is getting data, images from all over the world. And then it need to store the session state data for different user who are saving those images. So you need to capture the session details. And another thing, it is looking for a cost effective and least latency solution. Yes, please. Someone was saying something.
Yeah.
Sorry, which one? A, you said.
A or B.
A or B. Okay.
I'm not, so the cost effective wise, I'm not sure it's RDS or DynamoDB.
Mm-hmm. So
But
in A or B, the only difference I think is in the RDS or DynamoDB. But now, since
Yeah.
it is talking about serverless, so RDS is not a serverless service, while DynamoDB is a serverless service. Now, can anyone help me recall? Because I think I covered this when we were discussing about RDS. In RDS, how many different database engine were supported? Anyone recall that? RDS is a relational database service
I think
where we.
4 or 5 MySQL,
Mhm.
Oracle,
Okay.
I think
PostgreSQL.
it
Yeah.
was 6.
Yeah.
6, I think.
Yeah, 6 is the number. But now let's quickly revisit what those 6 options are. So you said Oracle, MySQL. What else?
Postgres,
Postgres.
PostgreSQL. Yeah.
Yeah. Then MariaDB. Another one is SQL Server. So all these are like server based databases. Means when we use RDS, what it does behind the scene, that it procure EC2 machine and we define the size that, okay, we need these kind of machine, D2 micro, D2 large, whatever. So we define the size and it make that database available on that EC2 instance for us. We also discussed another database here, which was Amazon Aurora. So Amazon Aurora is a AWS proprietary database, and that is now available as a serverless offering as well. So RDS, we cannot say that it is not a serverless service at all. There is just one flavor, Aurora, which has both the capabilities that you can procure Amazon server based database. Also, you can have serverless database. But here we are talking about serverless applications, and DynamoDB is an option available here. So it will be a better choice rather than this one. Okay. So all these services are looking good, but here it is lacking some service, which is CloudFront, because we need to deal with the least latency. So CloudFront is a service, like it is a CDN, service, cloud distribution network you create. So since this application is dealing with the images, so what CloudFront help you to do, that it will cache the images, and whenever anyone is trying to access that application, it will make those images available from the cache itself rather than downloading it from the source. So in order to get that latency, we should be using CloudFront on such applications. So here in these two options, if we quickly scan the services, so yes, definitely we need CloudFront, but here also we have option RDS or DynamoDB. So DynamoDB option, including with CloudFront, will be the right choice here because it is all serverless and it is letting us deal with the latency as well. So C should be the right choice. Okay, any different thoughts or any point which need more discussion? Okay, let's move on then. Okay, sorry, we are done with the questions.
Yeah, so these are just few sample questions that we picked up from a few of the old exams. So there are lots of questions available on the other free websites, and there are paid exams as well available. And there's one more option, like when you register on your AWS account, you can also register for a sample test. So when you think like you are ready, you can give us a sample test, which is a practice test. It costs you $25, and it is going to be half the duration of the normal exam, and half questions will come there. So it will give you a good view, like whether you are prepared or not.
If you simply Google like this AWS Solution Architect, you will get few links where you can see the terms of free questions. Okay, so just spare some time whenever like you are done with 2 rounds of preparation, I would say. Just means whatever course, whatever content you are following, so make sure that you are reading that once. Second time you are reading plus doing hands-on, so that you better understand the things. So after these 2 rounds, just practice, just attempt some practice questions available on the internet, and assess yourself. If you are getting 90% plus, then yes, you are all set to appear into the real exam. Otherwise, you need to spend more time on your preparation. Anything else? But otherwise, I think we are done whatever we planned to cover today. But if you have any questions, happy to discuss now.
Diwali and Rajat, Rohit this side. Any plans to have further sessions on solution architect professional?
Rohit, we can definitely plan and we will love to plan, but we really capped this series after lots of requests we were getting. But some enthusiasm was missing. Like so many participants means just apart from just 3 4 candidates, no one is really trying to interact, asking problems. So we are not getting that confidence that you guys are really picking up the pace, you are following us. So we are not getting that confidence that whether you are getting anything out of these things, or it's like you're just being a listener.
Yeah, because in
So
professional level exam we need a continuity, as it's going to be more in depth and needs lots of effort from our side and the participants as well. So that is why it is sometimes become difficult to organize sessions specifically for professional. We are getting this hours for a long time, but based on the audience, we never get that feeler that we should be going for it.
So, we can just go in depth, we can cover more concepts, but what is the point in covering those concepts if you are not getting even the basics? So, that's the concern here. So, if you guys come up with that approach that, okay, you have cleared the solution level, associate level certification. So, for that specific focus group, we can plan a session on the professional.
Okay.
Okay, Rohit, and could you complete that
Yeah.
hosting thing, or?
Can I share my screen?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, and also before winding up, we want to spend some time to get a feedback, like how you like the session, how was it, is there any point for improvement, if we should be including anything. So let us know.
Especially from the candidates who are not interacting much, we really want to understand whether you are getting the things or you're not getting the things. Were you expecting something else? So please share your views so we can make it more relevant for the audience. Because we are trying to do things based on our experience, based on our assumptions that these things might be relevant for everyone. But if you have different expectations or if you're not getting anything, so we need to understand those things so we can try to mitigate that.
Yep. So
I think as a prerequisite, we have to go through some materials, like some basic concepts or understandings, so that this will be uh, more not in the relevant perspective, but we'll get more out of this session.
So Muthu, on that point, like when we started the series, the session 1, we kept it all basic. So I think we covered like basic till intermediate
Yeah. Yes.
concepts. So I think that should not be a gap. But yes, if you are struggling to understand very basic things like the way we are connecting to the EC2, basic Linux commands or something, so that is something that comes under the prerequisite that we expect people should be having that level of knowledge, the basic general things, so you can actually use the AWS resources.
Yeah. Yes. I accept that. Since there are more services and each has its own advantage and disadvantage,
Yeah.
we go through complete details and get into this section. It will be like we'll capture more.
Yeah, so idea here is that as we kept it focused for solution architect associate, so we tried to cover all the core services which are listed in the solution architect associate level curriculum. So these are the core services and they are actually the part of all the exams, I would say. The depth only differs, and in different exams you get few more services added there. So idea is we are trying to give you that exposure and experience so you can explore these services further. You have that confidence that okay, you can explore. Let's say we have created a basic EC2 instance. Now when you are trying it on your own, you can you can play with some other configurations available in EC2 so you understand those things better. So we're just trying to give you that exposure and confidence so you can explore it further and understand and can relate the things, because if you don't have any knowledge and you're trying to check any documents, materials, any videos available, so you might not understand that. But after these sessions, I think you should be having that understanding, you should be having that
Yes.
confidence that you can understand those things.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
But
I agree with that.
honestly, when we are like trying to learn something new, definitely we need to spend some time and keep on spending that time. Don't get disheartened if you are not getting any concept on day one, because for few things are really difficult, which takes long time. But eventually you will start joining those dots. So it won't take long time. Trust me.
One more thing to add here, like in case you have tried the hands-on exercise, so do remember to delete all the things that you have created to avoid the unnecessary billing on your account.
Yeah, it's an important call out. Thanks, Rajat. Yes, Rohit, please go ahead. So as of now, we can see bucket and objects are not public. So first of all, you need to pick your bucket and go to permissions, I would say. First time, let's go to permissions and edit this and uncheck this, save this setting, right, confirm. So with this step, you are confirming that you are making this bucket available for the public access. Now go to the properties, not properties, sorry. Go to the permissions again and add that policy which you were adding to make it public bucket.
Okay, so before that, I just wanted to mention I've enabled this static website hosting.
Okay, fine. Just go back to the buckets one more time. Yeah, so earlier your status access level was that bucket and object are not public. But the moment you change that setting, now the status is objects can be public. And now as a third step, we are making this bucket itself public, for which we are going to add that policy. So here, paste that policy. And why it was not working earlier, because you didn't enable that setting and you were trying to make bucket public. So that's how it was finding a conflict. Try to save this one now. Unknown error. So something wrong with your JSON format. If you go to my Medium blog and pick this from there, or maybe you can use some JSON validator.
I think there's a space
In the end, I believe, right? S3 colon get object and your bucket ARN. No, effect allow was correct. So you want to allow this permission action. What is the permission? That on S3 bucket, you want to give this permission get object. And what is the resource? The ARN of your bucket. So you can copy this ARN from the top. Yep. Yeah, save it. Action does not apply to any resources in statement.
So I did some research on Google, and then I was told that you should put here slash and then
Okay, yes,
this one.
definitely.
But if I do it, then I'm getting an error message in terms of IAM. Okay, yesterday I was getting.
I think that was because of the reason that this bucket was not, you didn't enable that setting, because that step need to be done first.
Okay.
Okay, and then you can make this bucket public.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right, no worries.
I've not. I mean, I've kind of done 3 labs as of now. One was to create web server. Other was auto scaling with load balancer, and third one was kind of publishing static website using S3, where I got stuck. But anyways, I will go through the other labs and try to find out and
Great.
probably talk to you.
Good to hear, Rohit.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can keep exploring the labs mentioned on the Medium blogs, and you can also explore various other links and courses which we showed you, and like feel free to contact us if you are stuck on any specific use case.
Sure. Thanks.
Great. Thank you guys. Keep exploring and happy learning. Thanks for your time and patience.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Rajat and Dipali.